What's up guys and oh my god. What's up guys and welcome back to Slice. Today we are making bread and we're only going to make it with 4 ingredients, and I think that should be the aim of kind of every recipe that you make. You should try and remove as many ingredients as possible in order to make it kind of as simple as possible. You ever go online and you find like a recipe and it's got like random stuff like raisins and like 5 different types of flours and it takes like 5 hours to make? Well, I think it's just a waste of time. So today we're going to make a loaf of bread that only requires 4 ingredients. Okay, so let's get right into it.
So you're going to need 500 grams of strong white flour and 10 grams of fine salt mixed into it. It's important to have strong white flour so that you can get the gluten inside it. And we're also going to go with 10 grams of dry active yeast. Finally, we'll need 375 mils of lukewarm water, and you can tell it's lukewarm because the temperature will be the same as your skin.
So a couple things when it comes to yeast, right? The first is that salt is going to kill yeast. So if you put salt with your yeast mixture in the water straight away, it's going to sort of die and it won't really create a rise with your bread. But if you mix the salt with the flour, then it will be a lot easier. The second thing is using old yeast. So the minute you've opened a can of these, it has about 3 or 4 months before you can't really use it anymore. And so just to demonstrate, this is a packet of yeast that I've had for a few months. It's just been sort of sitting in the back of a cupboard. Now if I just yeah, so if your yeast is like this, don't use it. I mean, yeast smells anyway, but the best way to test if your yeast is fresh or not is just to try and bloom it in the water. If the foam sort of starts to foam up, then you know your yeast is fine, and if it doesn't, then that means your yeast is sort of inactive. So we're just going to try both of these out, the new one that I bought and an old one, and this will just show you, because often you might be making bread and you find that your dough isn't rising. It could be the fact that you're using old yeast. So here's an example.
Okay, so we'll start with the actual recipe, and we're going to mix the 10 grams of yeast into the water. Some recipes call for sugar. This does help, but as I'm keeping it basic, you just want to stir that in. But if you want, you can add a teaspoon of sugar. And very simply, I'm just going to put the old yeast in a small container just so that I can show you the difference. And so after 10 minutes, you can see that the old yeast has little to no reaction and the fresh yeast has bubbles that have formed on it. And this is how you can tell that the yeast is fresh. Also, the smell will be considerably different. The smell of fresh yeast, they compare it to a brewery. I mean, I wouldn't know, but the old yeast definitely smells off, and so we're just going to spill that. Okay, so we're going to add our yeast mixture into our flour and salt and give it a good stir. You want to do as much stirring as possible inside the bowl so that you have less work to do on the surface. And we're going to turn it out onto a marble surface, and this is the most important part. It's where most people go wrong, and it's very important to know that when you're making bread, you can't really over knead it, but you definitely can under knead it. So you want to knead it for at least 10 minutes. And so as you can see, I'm sort of bringing it together roughly. We're not really kneading it at this stage, just sort of making sure that all the flour is incorporated. At this point, your dough will feel very wet, but it's actually better to have a wetter dough than a dry dough. You don't want to put flour on it at this stage. It will ruin the dough. If you do feel like your bread is sticking, then you can use a bit of oil, but definitely don't add more flour to it. It will ruin the recipe. And so what we're going to do, as you can see, is a method where I'm going to slap, fold and turn. So as you can see, I'm slapping it down with considerable force, folding it over and turning it. And over time, you can see that the bread becomes very silky. It stops sticking to the surface as much. And as we've done that for about 10 minutes or more, if you'd like, you can just cover it with the bowl that you stirred it in and leave it to prove for about an hour. And this is the most important part. Proving your dough will show that the yeast has done its job and sort of made it rise, and it will also show that you've kneaded it properly. And as we can see, it's sort of spilling out the side of this bowl here because it's proved quite well. Now, as you can see, I should have oiled the bowl. As I took this off, it stuck quite a bit, but it gives you a good chance to see all the gluten that's developed inside it, and all these strands are going to make really nice air pockets when we bake it. And so we want to keep this air inside it, and so to give it a nice shape, what I'm going to do is take the edges and stretch them over. This will keep the air, but it will also help to give it a more centralized sort of shape. Now you can add some oil at this point, you can plait it, you can make it look really pretty, but to be honest, I like a good old-fashioned sort of rustic loaf, so I'm just going to put it in a lined baking tray as we've done here. Sprinkle it with a little dusting of flour. So we're going to bake this in an oven preheated at gas mark 8 for about 25 to 30 minutes or until it's nicely golden. And if you don't know if it's ready, you'll definitely be able to hear it just by the sound. Now look, I know this is not the prettiest loaf of bread you've ever seen, but I don't care. It's all about what's on the inside at the end of the day. And as we cut into this and look at the cross section, you can just see all the hard work that you've done kneading has paid off. You can see that the gluten is activated. You see all those little air bubbles that have formed. It's risen perfectly. It's nice and soft. It's just the most comforting thing, to be honest. And so try this your own way. Make different shapes, add different seasonings, make it special, make it better than I've done here. This is just a basic recipe. It's for you to be creative and make it even better. If you'd like to see more of these videos, please like, subscribe, and follow me on my socials at sliced_YT.